set up here. Domino, could you test the stuff? Can you test the YouTube and Instagram stuff? Okay. Well, hello. I'm Zachary Catron. I'm a composer, producer, and songwriter based in Brooklyn, New York. Thank you so much for joining me. Today we are going to be engraving and recreating what I have here, which is the Serenade in C by Mozart. It was recently discovered in Germany just a few weeks ago. And this was also featured in my last tutorial for how to move measures from one system to the next. So we're going to basically recreate this first movement here for playability, and once this movement is done, we'll just keep on going. One thing that I will mention is we are going to be doing it for modern playability. So what I mean by that is a lot of the old music uses shorthand. For example, the parts here use a lot of dashed lines on the music. There's a lot of questions around accidentals, but we're going to do it as if we're doing it for modern performance. All right. So to get started, I'm going to start a new file. And this is what you see when you have a new project. This is what's called the setup page. And here we can add single players, section players, ensemble. Ensemble is really useful in the case of orchestral building. They have standard orchestral for arrangements like brass, so we have brass 4-2-3-0. Same thing with strings. You can add entire string sections. The reason that Dorico handles it this way, as opposed to some other programs like Finale, is it comes to the parts and the part layouts, which we will get to later when we start looking at parts. For now, I'm going to add the section single players. So this is a trio, this piece, the Mozart, for 2 violins and cello. So let's talk about what this players versus layouts situation is. Basically, the players are the actual musicians that you have, and the layouts are the various scores that you have. So what this means is that I can be the violin 1 player, but on my part, if I wanted to, I could have the violin 2 part. So this is all how Dorico deals with linking basically between parts and players. The flows down here are your movements. So the Mozart, I believe, is in seven movements. The first movement being this march. So I'm just going to go down here and double click and just call it march for our first one. Now, if you'll see, our first page is super blank, even though we've given it some information. This is partly to do with how I have my default set. So one of the first things that I'll do is actually go into the information panel. So that's Control or Command I. And we're going to give it the title page. Let's see. Technically it's Serenade. Let's see. Mozart. And here we go. One thing you'll notice is we don't have any heading as to what the actual movement is for the march. So what I need to do is go into our layout options, which will deal with anything related to page and our flows. So if I go to flows, these are my program defaults. But what I actually want to do is that for new flows, we're going to allow it on existing pages because that's how the score works for the Mozart. And then for the flow headings, we're actually going to show it for all of the flows. So what that does is it adds it here. You can see what that looks like in engrave mode. It basically added this green text box. The text box on the left here would be for lyricists. The text box on the right is for the composer. And then at the bottom is a copyright. The X here, for the time signature, that's actually been more of a 20th century thing. So what I can just do is for our march, it is in 2/4. So that's Shift N for meter. Just type 2/4 and we got it. I like to work with a lot of runway. This is something that that Finale usually did, and something that I missed a lot about Finale when I first started, is that you could have a ton of bars at the beginning. You can still do that in Dorico when you start a new project, but usually it just defaults to 1. So what I do is there's actually a bar pop over, so that's Shift B. And here you can just type however many you want. So 45, sure, and it gives us all of that. One thing that you can also do is you can Shift bar and then do trim. This is one of my favorite things. Trim will just cut out any extra bar, any empty bars at the end. Alright, so we're doing this bass part. I got this part off of IMSLP. Someone very nicely scanned it in. There is no full score on the original publication. What we have here is just the parts. So it starts with the violoncello. You can see that right at the very top. And then violin 1, violin 2. That's all you got. So we're going to start with the cello. I'm inputting on an 88 keyboard that I have in my desk. Sorry, wrong page. Okay. So I double click to get into writing. Okay, so here's our first instance. I'm actually going to bring it over for the YouTube stream to be able to see. This is a very common shorthand. So what this is basically saying is this, do a half note in eighth notes, and then this, do a half note in 16th notes. I am not going to follow those kinds of shorthands for this case. I'm going to just do it as we would normally want to see it as modern day players. Now we get to our first dotted. One thing that I like to do is here I am changing the rhythmic value with my key command, my keyboard. So the number 5 gets me an 8th note, 6, 7, 8 goes up, or 4, 3, 2 goes down. One thing that I did not learn forever is if you double tap the rhythmic note, it will add the dot. So for example, I just did a 16th note and it added the dot right when I double tapped. So that's off and it's back, which is so useful. Next thing I want to talk about is the grid here. So down in the bottom left, very tiny, there is this. What this does is it defines our grid. So whenever I double click on an in write mode, I can move by these notches at the top, and that's our grid. So here I can select to actually make it 16th notes. I usually keep it on 16th notes. Obviously it depends on what you're writing on, but 16th notes is often the best for me. There is a key command to change the grid. Gosh, what is that? I think it is call something. Let's see, because I think you can also change it above. Or you can do the jump bar. So it's Alt or Option plus the brackets. So here it's decrease rhythmic grid resolution or increase it. So if I decrease it here, we just actually decreased it to a dotted. But here I'm now cycling through it. So I'm going to leave it back on 16th notes for this piece. Okay, we just got to measure 18. Here we have this beautiful repeat mark, which just means repeat back and front. Once again, sorry for everyone on Instagram, just popping it over so that folks on YouTube can see. Let me just check in on that. How's everyone doing? Thank you for joining me. So for repeats, Shift R, and then you basically just do your own little repeat sign. I think it's that. Forget the E command. Let's see here. In any case, you can always go to the right. And, oh no, it's because it's in bars. My bad. So it's in bar lines for the repeats. So here's our end and start repeat. Just click that. Okay. because I never defined a key, Dorico just took this as A flat. Makes sense because we're going up, and it just wants to show the half note properly. I can change the enharmonic with option and then the plus or minus sign. So it's easy to bring down. For the second half of bar 23, it really it figured it out for us. But one thing I can do actually at the beginning is define that we are in C. Oh, sorry. And it will take care of that. I think it's some signposts off. There we go. So now it knows it's in C major. That means it will handle accidentals in a much more diatonic friendly way. So in this case, it will most likely know that we would be going to the relative minor of A minor here. One thing that's really fun, and by fun I mean can be confusing, about the Mozart is if you look in the part, it shows there is no sharp on this G in the next bar. That's a modern day thing to repeat accidentals in the next bar. So it doesn't do it here, but it does do it at the end of the bar. Go figure. There are lots of these different typos throughout. I've already listened to a variety of different versions that handle a part in the violins differently. So that's been really interesting to hear how things get interpreted differently throughout various performances, because the score just actually isn't clear enough. And we don't have the historical practice anymore. One thing as well that's really useful is you can use the spacebar to jump by the rhythmic value you have selected. So for example, I have an 8th note selected. Even though my grid is in 16th notes, I can jump just by pressing the spacebar. I can also jump measure to measure using control or command and the arrow keys. So if I can go control left or command left and then right, and I can just jump to the front of each bar. That's very useful. I use that all the time. Oh, here's something fun that I'll show you that you can do. So these are measures that need to be split up so that they appear like their predecessors. So basically, we want this to repeat. Now, frankly, one thing we can just do is literally copy that, press R, and it repeats it. Another thing that you can do is divide by the grid. So I can say, I can make it an 8th note grid, go to the jump bar, and then split by rhythmic grid resolution, or Alt or Option U, because I'm on Windows. So then I can Alt down so that it is, now the grid is now 16th notes, and split by the resolution again. Lots of different ways to do it depending on where you are in your writing process. Just depends. Okay, so funnily enough, we're actually almost done with this movement. It's very short. The entire piece is 7 movements, and it only takes about 12 minutes to perform. And as I said before, This is actually the end of the bar, but it's only 39 measures, or the end of the movement, so I can just go Shift B, and then trim, and we have our end. This is a repeat sign, so Shift B, and there we go. And that's our cello part. No dynamics, a few accidentals, and 2 pages. So let's move on to the violin part for this. Violino primo. Inputting chords, super easy. If you have a keyboard, of course, you just press all of them. There is a chord tool, so the other way I could do this is with this little chord tool. So I can do G, and it will add above. So the first thing I notice here is that when I press G on my actual like typing keyboard, it is an octave too high. I can drop that with Command or Control Alt and down, and then I can press E and then C, and there you go. Take Q to turn that off, and you can keep going. It's so funny. You really can type with the keyboard in your pitches just using the notes. I will do that sometimes if I'm feeling really lazy and I don't feel like going to my keyboard for whatever reason. Oh, we have our appoggiatura. Oops. Let's see. I don't know what tool I selected here, but that little doodad is an appoggiatura. So the way to do appoggiaturas in Dorico is this little grace notes spot. You can also just use the one of the slash keys. And then we get to our first tuplet. Before we go on to that, I will say, you'll notice in a lot of older music, there is no slash through the grace note or the appoggiatura. At the bottom here is your properties panel. You can get it through this little arrow right here. You can just choose the type here. I'm not sure, I tried looking for it. I don't think you can default it that way through an entire project. I think you have to change each one of them individually. If not, maybe someone can let me know if they know otherwise. Okay, triplets. So triplets, you want to select the rhythmic value that you're going to do first. So in this case, 16th notes. Here's a little triplet function here for tuplets, or you can press semicolon. And here you can just define whatever you want. So for example, you could do like 7 and 4, you would type it as the ratio. In our case, you can actually just press 3, and because triplets are so common, it'll actually just do it if you just type 3. And then get off of it, I just usually press escape and reselect. I usually end up doing the grace notes a little bit ahead of time, just because I find them annoying to do while I'm writing in. So here there's actually a B appoggiatura here. And once again, we can just change that grace note type. I'm not going to be adding any editorial things in terms of like slurs or whatnot of what I think what should be there. I'm just going to represent what's on the page, but just in an easier to read fashion, so without the shorthands. One thing that's really interesting about the Mozart here is, oops, sorry. They do a lot of split bars. Oh my gosh. So, for example, there actually should be, a bar line here, and then this bar is split. So it's really beat 1, beat 2, these, and then beat 1 of the next bar should begin here, and then the second beat is all the way on the left. So this is something you find a lot in older music, 18th and especially 17th century music, splitting in different parts of the bar, usually in the middle of the bar. Very, very common because they were trying to save as much ink and publishing as possible. Here we also get our first dynamics. So we have piano forte, piano forte. So there are basically two ways to do that. You can actually type the dynamics ahead of time, so I can type P and it'll show there. Or you can do it after the fact. Whoa, what did I do? Oh, I did 64. It's wild. So these are both forte. Yeah, so this is one of those spots where in different recordings I've heard it done differently. So basically we end on this cadence having modulated to G. And so when we're in this part, there's an F sharp in the cello. So it's like, shouldn't there be an F sharp in the violins as well? Well, there isn't one, and I've seen people perform it where they perform this as an F sharp. I've seen people where they perform this one not as an F sharp and they do an F sharp later, even though it's not in the part. And I think it's just one of those really fun things of, a lot of this music did not have a lot of instructions. So we're just, dealer's choice as to how you want to do it. The next part of this violin line is actually just a third up from the cello part. So what I'm just gonna do is just grab the cello. What I'm just gonna do is grab the cello part, paste it, and then bump it up a third. Let me just check that that's right. And then, these actually all go up a third. And then what I'm going to do actually is I can just add notes above. So I can add perfect third. It's technically a minor third, or I'll just do a diatonic third above. Easy. Let me just check in. How's everyone doing? If you have any questions, please comment, and I would be happy to answer them. And thank you so much for joining me. just went to go do playback. I hit the wrong button. Here's another really common thing. In the Mozart, there is no triplet mentioned. It is just written as if there was a 3, but he actually doesn't write the 3. Nevertheless. Take our triplets off. Here's an instance where Dorico is beaming it appropriately for 2/4. The cleaner way, though, to look at it is, frankly, this would either be a 6/4, or sorry, 6/16 in the place of 4. Or if we want to keep it in this triplet style, we can split the bar. So we can go to beaming, split beam, and then that's fine. Or you could do it the way that he really has it, which is like that. I'm probably going to leave it like that for this, just because it'll reflect the original score a little bit more. Stop pressing that. Get some of our first articulations here. You can also use keyboard commands, so I think this one is the apostrophe. Oh no, that's for Marcato. Which one are you? Oh, it's the right curly brace. So you'd have to press shift for that. So it would be really good, like shift and then the right bracket. And then this is slurred. For the slurs, you can just, if you just click the first one, press S, it'll just slur to the next note. The score has this as a D sharp, which is fine. We can keep that. And we have an appoggiatura here again. And then we go back, yeah, I tend to like to just input a bunch of notes first and then go back and add things. Dorico is really powerful in the sense that you can kind of add everything at once. It's not how I personally like to work, or rather, it really depends. But yeah, here's for sure a typo. So there are not enough beats in this measure. You just have an eighth, 2 30-second notes, and then 2 8 notes. So we're actually missing a 16th. I think the way that people have been dealing with this is they just assume it's da 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 da, so they just dot the eighth, which is what I will do. Especially because it happens the exact same way in the next bar. So it's just this and then down. So this is another typo that bothers me. I had a lot of trouble with this. It makes more sense that this is a G and then a G. It is clearly G then an F, but when you do it as a G to an F, it doesn't make any sense, and we will see that with the violin 2 part. Once again, that is Option or Alt U to split at the rhythmic grid, and my rhythmic grid is a 16th, which comes in handy for this piece, for sure. Just realizing I haven't been recording the last 40 minutes of the stream, which makes me very sad. But we're recording now. That's how it goes. Okay, so where were we? Oh, I for sure skipped a bar. So this is supposed to happen here. Where did I skip a bar? Oh, there's an extra bar in the cello part. Okay, well here, I'll show you this. So I can go to Insert. Dorico has a very powerful insert. Dorico has a very powerful insert mode. Can just press I or the actual insert button on your keyboard. If I just delete this bar, boom, everything popped over to where it should be in the cello part. Be careful because, you know, depending on what you're selecting, like for example, if I also selected the top and I did the delete, it would delete both of them. It can be finicky. One thing that they do though is at the top you'll notice there are these gray bars. You can turn these on with Option or Alt and T. If you hold Alt, it'll show you the grid that you're currently working on and where it lands and scans with everything. This is how you delete bars, individual bars. It's also how you can select entire bars or the entire piece. So for example, if I want to just select an entire section, like this first section, I would click here, then shift click bottom, and then in this little box, We just selected everything in the page. I can also use this to insert bars using this little plus sign. Or there's this little stop sign. So what this does is it blocks things from the, it basically creates an insert blocking point. So what that means is that as I'm in insert mode, I think if I delete this bar, otherwise, well here if I turn it off, if I delete this bar, everything moves over to the left because I'm in insert mode. If I put this stop here and delete it, they don't move. So so what I could do is I could go up here, just the stuff before that block moves. So it's very useful if you're doing cuts in the middle of material that you've already worked on. Okay, so we fixed that, so now everything lines up again. This is the hard part of engraving just off of parts. And now here we can actually just insert mode, delete this bar, and now let's get out of insert mode before I break anything. So we're going to change the grace note type, get rid of the slash so that it is a proper appoggiatura as per the time period. And now we have the da 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 figure again. So actually I'm just going to pull it from the last repeat where we had it. Except now it's just up a fourth. So Shift I for inputting notes, and then I can do T, P4, and now it's up a perfect fourth, which is exactly what we want. Great. And that is, should I just double check that I added everything? Oh, there should be a piano here. I feel like dynamics in the 1700s were just more like, oh, here's a reminder that you should maybe play a little softer. As opposed to like a modern day guaranteed instructions. Okay, so that's the violin part, first movement, done. Going to pop over, pass the other movements to violino secondo for the second violin part. One of my favorite parts about this movement has this beautiful pedal tone right at the very beginning, where the violin 2 does these gorgeous, soft triplets, and then it pops up and it's just really lovely. And now we can just take this and repeat it for the full bar. Except these, we gotta put up a fourth. How is everyone doing? Remember to please add please add any questions that you have in the chat, and I would be happy to answer anything as it comes up. Okay, and I just got to here, and here, you, and then we do have dynamics. I think the same ones, so we can just copy that. Yeah, so here I can talk more about the kind of, I can talk more about the sharp, too sharp, or not too sharp in this section. So here, in theory, that's a natural F. Some people perform it as an F sharp because we have now modulated. Even though it's not written. And then similarly here, I've seen people where this is an F natural, but then some recordings they do this as an F sharp because it comes right after an F sharp in the cello, and would make it a if it were a natural, it would make it a cross relation tone. Personally, I actually think it sounds pretty good if as just a natural. That's how I performed it for the tutorial video this past Monday. Because, you know, maybe Mozart was playing with some cross tones, or maybe some of them were supposed to be sharps and they just knew and never wrote it down. So that it was just a practice thing. We'll never know. This is all we have to work with. But yeah, that is the first A set for the piece. One thing I realized I hadn't actually done yet is the staff labels. By default, on my system, I have the staff labels not showing. That's because I mainly write musical theater, and in musical theater that is not something that you want to show unless you're doing a final orchestration. But what I can do for classical music, go to Stabs and Systems, Staff Labels is right at the top, and I can do show full for the first system. I don't need to show abbreviated because for chamber music you usually don't, but I will show the full on the first system. And here we go with our three pieces. If I want a very beautiful bracket between them, I can group them. So here that is in our setup mode, all the players go at the very bottom, add group. Oh, that's for that. Sorry, we're not going to group them. We're going to actually just them out and delete this group. We can actually just go in and go to engrave mode and bracket them. It's the other way, that's the proper way to do it. You can also create sub-brackets, so for example, why is violin 1 below violin 2? Has it been like that this whole time? That would be both sad and hysterical for me to not notice that. We'll just do a regular bracket and then get rid of the sub bracket, come on. So I added the music to the wrong player, which is totally fine, because I can just cut that, take everything that we just put into the violin 2 part, and then using Alt-M, just move it down to the next page, or next staff, I mean, and then repaste it. So it's an easy fix to a silly mistake. Okay, one thing that I'm going to do here is, we did it before with these triplets, is I'm going to break these up. What I'm doing here is, I created a key command for myself to use Control or Command on Mac, Control, and then one of the slashes to be able to split beams because I use it so often. One way that, so I can show you how to make key commands. So if we go to Preferences, or Control or Command and then a comma, here's the really, really cool and really powerful key command window. It gives you basically every single option in the program. So for what, and then you can search for them. So what I did to split beams. It'll narrow it down to the Edit menu and then Split Beam. Here is where you could basically press like a MIDI learn sort of a deal, and it'll just learn the shortcut. For the actual MIDI learn is that if you had a MIDI device and you wanted, if I wanted my low A to always be the splits, I could do it like that. Could also give it a jump bar alias, and that's how you add them. If there is already a key command that exists, so for example, if I did like the dynamic popover for create a dynamic, it'll show you that it's already there. So it'll show you that Shift D is already the key command for that. And if I tried to add Shift D as a command for something else, it would give me a warning that says, oh wait, don't do that. This key command already exists. Okay, back to violin 2, we are going after the repeat. And then this next part is a third down from the violin 1 part. So we'll just do that, bring it down a third. after this. A third up. Yeah, this is a hard one. So that's an F for sure. Okay. What do you guys think? Is this an F? Gotta be, right? So that's option U, split on the rhythmic bar. It's interesting that it's an, I guess that makes sense. I mean, it's interesting that it's an F because it's doubling an F in the first violin part. I feel like it's usually not very common to double, it's not very common to double the seventh, but hey. And then here's the spot where in the score that should be an F, but it's a very strange dissonance with this because you have a half, you basically have a half tone dissonance here. I haven't heard a single person or single group perform it with that F. Everyone has been performing it with a G. I think that makes more sense as well. What I have heard some people do is I've heard some people do, because there's a kind of an ink blot here, they'll do this, they'll do this as 2 30-seconds, but I think it's pretty clear that this is supposed to be 8th, 16th, there's the dot, and then there's the 30-second. So that's how I like to keep it. No, that's in this bar. So here I selected that wrong. So I need to be on a 16th before I press the triplet button. Okay, this is another instance where I saw on one of the versions that people uploaded to IMSLP, and this is not a real publisher. This was just a someone like me who just engraved it themselves. They did this as, they actually made this a C, which I don't necessarily know why you'd want. I mean, I know why they did it, because what they did is they basically assumed that it would make this chord, which is a C first inversion. But I actually think the A makes more sense, because what it's really reflecting is this, the passing tone, and then it lands on the B to make this first inversion. Okay, now we have this extra bar here at the end, so bar, just gonna trim that. Oh, what? doesn't want to behave? Okay, well we can always just leave it that way. And there you go, first movement. I want to check one thing that I noticed in the cello part, actually. So we're going to pop over to that. So basically, there are eighth notes here and 16ths in the cello in measure 22, which could totally be fine. I know it's eighth notes in the second part for sure. I just wanted to check that the cello was actually 16ths and that I didn't make that up. And yes, it does look like it's 16ths. Okay, well, we're at the hour mark, and the first movement is done. There it is. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Once again, let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer any questions. Sorry about that. Happy to answer any questions from anyone. If you are a Dorico user, let's see here. I'm going to just go on to movement 2 now, which is also an allegro. Then go back to the cello part. We'll do the cello part first. And here is how to add a new movement. So first I'm going to go to setup mode. Here's our flows, just like where we started with the march. I'm going to click here to add a flow. And this is allegro. Now it shows up at the bottom of my next page. How did that happen? And I mean that in a good way. That's what I wanted, but let me show you how it happened. So we go to page setup, go to flows. For new flows, I allowed on existing page. More to keep with the fact that this is chamber music, it's a very short multi-movement work, so we can basically save the paper. I can always, if I wanted to start it on a new page, I can do that, and now you'll see the first movement ends properly here, and we have a new title page for the second movement. I'm going to allow it on the existing page, and now it's time to redo all the, we have our meter and our key change stuff. Before that, I'm just going to step out, grab a drink of water, and I will rejoin you shortly. So thanks so much, and stick here for just a second. Okay, thank you for your patience. So we're getting started with the second movement with the cello part. This is an allegro. Oh wow, this cello part is riveting. Okay, so we're in common time, so Shift M for the meter. You just put a C and it will give you common time. Once again, I like to have a bit of a runway with my bars, so I'm going to just drop in 50. And we have lots of eighth notes. So what I'm actually going to do first is put in a whole note, change my grid to be eighth notes, and then Option U to split it into eighth notes. And then I can repeat. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then these are our first changes. So up, and then down. So the way that I did all of these repeats really quickly is just the R button. You can just type R, and it will just repeat what you have, whatever your selection is. I'm just going to copy that so I can go up a T, P5, go for perfect fifth. And then it seems, oh, this is interesting. So there's kind of, there's a mistake bar line in here. So those are clearly half notes, but it looks like an errant bar line. It's okay. Oh, wrong one. So that's T. Perfect fourth. Or since it's half notes now, what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to go and input the half notes and then break them up later. So we have and then that is our bar line. Shift B. You have our double repeat again. And then all of these half notes I'm going to break on the rhythmic grid. And just like that, get all my eighth notes. Has anyone been listening to recordings of this piece? Because it says allegro, but I swear people have been performing this as if their life depends on it. Oh. So just checking that everything is working. Okay. Yeah, so the various recordings I've heard, this piece is like, it's so fast, and so I'm very curious to hear if anyone has been listening to it and if they think it should go slower. Once again. is a natural, that is a natural F, and then he actually extended the staff a little bit to get that. Okay. So then the second time it happens, that is 8 notes. These are all 8th notes. Watch out. The score is going to explode. Boom, just like that. We give it our and repeat. Okay. Next part. Let's go to violin. Oh, those are 16ths. Oh, here's something that's interesting. There's no F sharp in this measure, but there is in the previous measure. I think we can assume that it would also still be here, because it's a repeated phrase. Similarly, similar here, is it? Okay. That's gotta be an F sharp. It just for sure has to be. And then in the, here, it looks like there's a trill, but hilariously, that looks added with pencil. So, I'm not gonna put that, I'm not gonna put that trill in. Oh, but there is one before, so, okay. So this is definitely a trill. The way you do that is Shift O, then just TR. That's your Shift O as an O for ornaments. totally optional as to whether you want the little trill squiggle. You can turn that off in the, in the properties window. Has trill line, leave it off. So we can turn that off. And let's see, I guess I'll add the second one here, but I might editorialize that. I think if I go to engrave mode, there might be more options to make it editorial. Dorico has some editorial features. It looks like no, I'd probably have to add any brackets after the fact. So I'm just gonna leave it off for now. To be more accurate. Okay, so that's violin 1 for the beginning done. Let's just give it a good look through. Okay, so let's keep going. Okay, so that's yeah, here's a good one. So I put this on the wrong rhythmic beat. So what I'm doing is I'm using Alt or Option and then the right and left arrows, and that will move it by the grid. So right now our grid is an 8th note. If I changed it to 16th, it would then move it 16th off. We'll push it back to 8th because of how fast this piece is. Here, actually, before I do that, let me go back, because this is another opportunity. I put this in twice as fast. How do I make it so that it is actually twice as long? So this is augmentation and diminution. It's all the key, everything. So first, turn on insert mode. That's very important. Then control or command, shift, and alt, and then the right and left arrow keys. So I want to go right, and it did it. Left, and we'll make it even shorter. I think if you don't use the insert, it'll just start covering up. Yeah, so if you don't use the insert, it'll just start covering up the length and do all kinds of stuff like that. So you've got to have insert on. But you can do it, and it's very, very useful. I think this is very similar to let's see how much I can get away from just transposition. So, oh, great. And then this is. So I did a perfect 5. I probably didn't need to do a perfect 5 because that's going to go there. It's a natural F, and I'm actually, it's a flat, it's a flat B. It's a gorgeous section. It's so inventive, it just keeps rolling on the idea and it just makes it more and more exciting. I think minus T, is it? Oh, I think it's T and then minus 5. Yeah. Oh, what is this? What do we think this is? Ooh. Sorry. Is it too fast to actually play it as a double stop? That would be insane. Is it? Okay, if anyone knows if this is actually a double stop, otherwise I'm gonna go with the larger dot, and that's a B. Okay, there's all the note input. Let's go in and add some of the ornaments. So we have our trills. This has a trill, this has a trill. Articulations, that's a slur, that's a slur. Okay, go back. Slur. Nothing, working backwards. That has a staccatissimo. Same deal here. So funnily enough, there isn't really anything, even though they're all these 16ths, they're not in the first half. So I wonder if in the second part he actually wants some slur before they're détaché. Like, I don't know. But I think I'm gonna leave it there. That's all that's actually written. Um, so let's pop down to the second violin part. Same thing, a lot of eighth notes, so we're just going to start with that, and then, yeah, that's all eighth notes. And then this one as well. Yeah, someone definitely came in here with pencil at some point in history, who knows, and like performed this. Because here's they marked solo, which is wild. They were also, they must have played violin. Oh no, because the other thing was in violin one. But in any case, yeah, history's crazy. Who knew? Who knows how many hands this passed through? Actually, they might know, and I just don't know. I don't know the full rundown. So we have a little bit of imitative counterpoint. So actually what I'm going to just do is just copy from the violin one part. I think that's sharp. Oh, that's really hard to tell. Okay, I'm gonna say sharp because it was a sharp in the first violin part. Oh man, that one's tricky. Here, what would it sound like? Yeah, that's okay, and then with a natural it would be. No, there's no way. That's gotta be a sharp. Oh, it is the same. So we can actually just do that. Again, it's the same thing here where actually now there's no sharp in this measure at all. But it even lands on the F. But it's got to be an F sharp. Oh wait, this was the bar where there was a question about the natural anyway. That would be so wild if it were. Um, oh, fun syncopated rhythm here. And then that repeats. Okay. Cool. Second beat. That was the allegro, first half. Now on to the second half. Where is it here? Here it is. Once again, this one's missing all of the slurs and articulations of the first violin part. But I guess you could presume that they're there. Oops, that was a typo. Oh, where? Okay. And then this is down. So moving pitches up and down, I always use the key commands. So I just had a video on this a couple weeks ago. Alt and then the up and down arrows, just normal diatonic step. Shift and Alt is chromatic. And then Control and Alt is jumping octaves. It's super useful, and frankly, it's so fast that sometimes I don't even bother with the transposition. Because I could, for example, if I wanted this to go down a seventh, I could go T and then -7, and it would do it. But that's actually, to me, that's actually more typing than just down an octave, up a step. So it's kind of what you want to do. But the important thing is, you should never use your mouse and keyboard. The key commands are so much faster. And then anything that I say, Control, I'm on Windows, so Command is what you want to use if you're on Mac. And then this part, I think really is just the same, just up a fourth. Then this is okay. Oh, I see. That I was like, for a second that's hard, but I realized. So you'd want to be in. You'd probably want to be in third position on the G string. That's tricky. That's a tricky octave. Why Momo, why? Oh, unless... Is it one after the other? That's... Okay. This is another instance where who knows what was going on in this Austrian's brain. But that bar isn't even full. So 1 beat, 2 beat, 3, 4? Or is it because when they do, when they do double stops, they do it like that, where they don't do it like we might do today, which is which is maybe more where you have like two note heads, and then you just draw a line through. They don't really do that. They always do a note head with one and then do a note head with the other, and it makes everything so much more difficult to read. If you've ever looked at any of the original Bach violin sonatas and partitas, any of the manuscripts, they're riddled with stuff like this. So who knows, genuinely. Since it's missing a beat, I'm actually going to be inclined to say that that's not an octave, and I would almost say that that's actually supposed to go like this, because that also makes more sense with the voice leading in the violin 1 part. At least if I were playing, that's how I would want to play it. I'd want to play it not as a random perfect octave across strings in 3rd position. All right, let's keep going. Okay, so that's one more repeat, and then goes again, but that's D, and then it's this up a step, again that's all, the arrow up. Oh, and that's... And then we are back to the syncopated notes. I'm just going to grab that from the previous section, jot that down. Nope. One thing that Dorico does that's kind of weird to get used to, which just happened, is basically, I made a mistake. And so, for example, I had all of this selected, it popped up here, that went up, and I was like, oh no, let me undo that. So when I undo, here it is undoing the pitches, but if you'll notice, it's actually undoing the selection. So selecting an object in Dorico is in itself an undoable or redoable action. It's not like that in a lot of programs. It's something that took me a while, but this is all to say that if you undo something or you redo something and you're like, why isn't anything happening? Because it's actually because it's selecting and deselecting. What I actually meant to do was bring that up to C. All right. And that is the second movement. I'm sorry, I keep going to save it. Let's have it. But that is the second movement complete. And here we go. So we have the march, then the allegro. So let's just take the last 15 minutes. Let's look at parts. So parts are linked in Dorico. That's a question that I get asked a lot actually. Like, oh, are they linked like they are in Finale? And they sure are. It's these tabs. That's one way to see them. You can always see them through, I think, the view. Where is it? Sorry. Oh yeah. So you can also actually do it through various layouts in the windows, or you can just do it through the tab. So when you click that tiny plus button, which is so easy to miss, here you can select various layouts. Select a recent layout. That's just for orchestral scores if it's easier. In the case of this, let's just do violin 1. And here you can make all kinds of edits that are reflected back. And you can change things to certain layouts. So what I mean by that is if I go to layout options and I want my part to be, let's say it's part size 10 by 13, it's an orchestral part size, one of them, I can apply it directly to violin 1. So if I go to full score, the size is still the same. And if I go to violin 2, the size is still letter, which is how I've been writing it in. But that's why with all of these various notation and engrave options, so like for example, notation, you can have things apply to only specific flows, or the piece in general, but this is the way, this is one way to make changes without unlinking things. But for example, if I change this note, bar 32 of the first movement, and I go back to the full score, it's changed, and it's actually selected still. Oops. So what else might I want to do for parts? You can do cues, funnily enough, because this is chamber music and there are so few moments of rest. We don't really have to talk about cues in this piece, but let's just say I wanted the cue from the violin 2 part to go over here. I could start here, and it's this little ear symbol on the right, cues, create a cue. It will suggest cues. I never do this because it really doesn't, I don't know what other algorithm makes this suggest cues happen, but I'm not a big fan of it. But I just do create cues, create a new cue, and then I can say, let's say I want the violin 2 part. Just start searching it, and it will make it. It'll only give you about a beat, but then you can click and drag to get more. And oh boy, isn't that riveting? That is a riveting amount of material that would definitely let me know when to come in. But here you can also make all kinds of different changes to your cues. You can do the placement of the cue text, you can change the various text. You can have it show, the transposed clef is really important for various, transposing parts. Same thing with octave transpositions and octave shifts. You can also turn things to a rhythmic cue. That's really useful, especially for grabbing from percussion parts and whatnot. If you don't need any pitch information, or if the part doesn't have pitch information, you can always create a rhythmic cue. And even with that, use slashes if you want. But in any case, I will delete that, and actually, let me just restore back what we had. There it is. This is basically what the parts look like. A big part, of course, is doing things for page turns. There's not a ton of time for page turns in this, but let's see what it could look like. So for example, one thing I could do, if I wanted this first part before the repeat to be one frame, or one section, I could actually make that into a frame. Now what it immediately did was just push it to the next page because this one didn't have enough space, which is fine. But let's say I really wanted all of it on one page. What I could do is actually mess around with the frames a little bit here and try and get some more space for the music. Actually, there's even so little space now. So it doesn't like it there, but that's totally fine. I'm just gonna do all that. Oh, actually, before I do, what I'll do first, if you'll notice in the top right there are these pages, and there's this little red triangle. What that means is that I've overridden the page template default. So basically, Dorico really likes it when you have this. You set the default layout to start with, and then that makes it happy. So what I can do if I don't like what's going on here, if something's acting wonky, I can actually just remove the page override and it will fix everything. It will not remove the frame break. I have to edit that myself, and it will pop it back. All right, and since no one's currently watching, so I think I'll just actually end it there for now. Thanks so much for hanging out and for stopping by. And look at that. We have the first two movements of Mozart's Ganz kleine Nachtmusik. Thanks so much for stopping by.